Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode. Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. We are here in the studio today with a special guest. And this is someone that we've met just recently, but I can't tell you how many people in our community kept saying to me, have you met Lyndsey Scott yet?
Yeah.
You need to meet this person. Have you met her? And
so
when I met her, I was like, oh yeah, I needed to meet her. So we're so excited to introduce her to this community. So let's tell you a little bit about her before she brings her beautiful voice into this podcast this morning or today. So Lyndsey Scott is a multimedia artist, song leader, songwriter, and ritualist committed to exploring community singing as a technology of belonging and a strategy for mutual liberation. I think that sort of says it all. I mean, it's so powerful. Lyndsey composes and records mindful mantra music. She's currently the fellow in the Grant Wood Fellowship, which is a really prestigious and big program here at the University of Iowa. She's been doing amazing work in our community that we're so excited to bring forward. And she's just gorgeous energy.
Bright light.
Mm-hmm. She exudes, I don't even know what you exude, but I want more of it, Lyndsey. So thank you for being here today.
Right here, be in your mirror.
I love it. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here with you too. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, we just tipped you off a little bit before we started recording that we love to start with the question of tell us about your first 10 years. We always believe there's threads and through lines from when we are young and the wildness in us as children that show up in ways later in life. So tell us about what was it like for Lyndsey in her first 10 years?
That's a fun question. Well, the family that I chose to incarnate into, rural Illinois, super duper conservative Christian farm town. My parents were academics, but they really started like studying the Bible with their friends, and they were helping to found a church. So I was born into this like real cultural change in their own lives where they were just like starting to have home church and really deeply building community. Like we always had people in our home. My mom was always playing the piano and making up songs. So I would go to sleep with my mom, just like singing devotional, like freestyle. I was really obedient and like very high achieving.
Good girl.
Good girl.
Oh, such a good girl.
Like, good girl club here.
I would wash my own mouth out with soap when I left. It was like that level.
Yeah.
And I would walk around the house, my mom says, with my hands, like my fingers all squished together, so I wouldn't accidentally flick someone off. So there was like, fear of sinning. So, that form of Christianity that I was born into had a lot of like legalism that brought a lot of fear in me and kept my wildness like deeply at bay. I kind of was afraid of my own wildness, which was very there, but wasn't necessarily welcomed into the frame. I loved playing outside. We were the kind of kids that would, mom would shut the back door and be like, pee outside, you're good. And we just like hung out all day, every day. I remember collecting the Samara, the whirly gigs from the maple tree, just like so many, and just spending hours like peeling them and like pretending like they were my kids. So have always been a plant mommy, and definitely were just like making up songs, making up dances, making up parades. Like there was a lot of jubilation. Like one of my things that I aim for in my community art now is collective effervescence. And I think that
That's
was,
the word that I
beautiful.
was looking for to describe you.
Yeah.
Effervescent. Yes.
yeah, there's like this fizziness that comes from collective play, collective discovery. I like to think like, when we get together, it's more than the sum of our parts. And there's certain ways we can be together that alchemize that. And so I think my upbringing, like I love to write stories, I was very creative, but it was also, you know, tinged with this like need to please whoever the authority was. So definitely grew up within a patriarchal construct that I'm still
Unwinding.
decomposing. What are we doing with this? Yes.
Yeah.
Get out of my brain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that speaks to so many people listening to this, speaks so directly to me,
Mhm.
the structures that we were contained in early on. And there was good in that. And there's a lot to now as we grow into, I think, our authentic selves to deconstruct. There's a lot to unlearn in many ways.
Yeah.
So much so. Yeah, my 20s was like a violent reaction against, like, I stayed 100% in until my early 20s. And then my 20s was like the pendulum swinging in the opposite direction, shave my head, be out of my mind most of the time, riding bikes, like engaging a wildness, a lot of gender play that was helping me to break down the codes that I was scripted with that weren't me. So there was a lot of discovery and a lot of reaction and rebellion in that discovery. There's a lot of beauty, but then I also needed to heal from that decade.
Yeah. So tell us, so you grew up in this small community. How did you leave that community? What did that look like? Was that chosen for you, or were you able to forge your own path out of that?
I stayed just like along the path, the expected path, like pretty much through college. College was a little bit of the back and forth dismantling, like, little high school valedictorian, come to my Bible study, pre-med. There was a moment for me in college that was pretty prophetic when I was starting to wrestle with these big questions, and I was dabbling in art classes. And I remember really wanting to do this photo shoot with all the leftover squid from the physiology lab. And I was also like, just wrote an entire like manifesto on a quiz instead of answering any of the questions. I just was like trying to express and trying to figure it out. And the course director was like, "Sweetie, have you considered art school?" And then that was when I made my way from pre-med to art school. And then I really just learned to start trusting my own compass. One of my favorite professors was just like, pay attention to what you pay attention to. And a lot of my early art was like wrestling with the canon of the church. Like I would take a painting from the canon and F with it.
Oh, so I love that description or that idea that one voice for you kind of shifted you, like gave you permission almost to say, I see something in you. I see the art in you. I see the imagination, creativity in you. And instead of trying to shut you down, actually kind of directed you almost to a
Right. And was directing me to like an
yourself.
inner listening, which I hadn't been
Doing.
really invited into, to just feel the wisdom that lives within me, or my own intuition, my own ability to ask questions without knowing the answers.
A good teacher.
What I'm so curious about is in those first 10 years, you perhaps had inklings of this wild girl in you. And I think all of us carry a wildness. It's not pejorative. It's true. It's just the authentic nature of who we are. But in your situation, it got very boxed into a conservative, religious place, and you were good and you followed the rules and you followed the path you were taught. So when did the wild, authentic, true Lyndsey start to emerge? I mean, it sounds like the 20s, but now where you sit at this point in your life, when do you think that true, authentic Lyndsey started to really show up?
Yeah, in my early 20s, when I had left the church and I had left sort of the structure of my family, and I was living in collective houses with artists in St. Louis, and collaboration really became my church. And there were so many lifestyles that I never had access to in my small town upbringing, that I started to just like feel the bigness of the world and feel how many wisdom streams there are dancing, and also to understand more the way that structural racism had framed my understanding. Like St. Louis was a powerful place to come into racial awareness and racial awakening, and many different factors, including an experience of violence in my life, created sort of a rupture of my reality as I knew it, and invited me like very directly into my healing journey.
That was how old? How old were you when that incident happened?
I was 27.
You were 27. Okay. And so that really shifted something very deep in you.
Yeah, life couldn't continue as it had. And I just was like looking for tools to want to stay on planet Earth. And that's when I found yoga and meditation and permaculture and Rumi and Hafez.
So all of that blossoming came out of the trauma and the pain.
God enters
Which
through the womb.
is what
right?
happens, right?
Yeah, the light is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were in St. Louis for a period. And then when did you, what was your first foray into, because your voice has become this instrument of so many beautiful things. When did that develop young, or did that come a little bit later in life? You said your mother sang to you. When did your voice show up?
Yeah, worship was just part of our household and part of what was so native, like song as a tool of devotion, as a tool of just like letting whatever is in the heart overflow, was one of the deepest gifts I received from my childhood. You know, I threw a lot out in my 20s, and then I've been reclaiming the things I threw out with baby in the bathwater. And so I didn't sing collectively after I left the church until some of the collaborations in St. Louis. We were starting to play. The only band official that I've ever been part of was the Dissonettes. And it was really just a weird art experience. Two besties and I, we would dress up in green sequins and on purpose sing different songs at the same time. And we would like perform with the noise musicians in the basement. So song came back into my life as a way of exploring weirdness.
Nonconformity.
And also as a protection mantle. My art studio was in an abandoned warehouse, and it was sketchy AF. But I was 20, I didn't care. So I'd, park my car and have to walk up these dark 4 flights of stairs to get to my spot. And it had amazing acoustics. And so I would sing to protect myself and sort of create this bubble of love and safety. Like, here I am, I'm coming, there's a human coming up, but I come in peace, and it helps.
So wait a second, you would literally sing as you walked up those flights of stairs just to alert people. It's so interesting, because you would think the opposite. You would make yourself small to like get up unaware, and instead you like expanded into your full power.
That's I love.
And that was
amazing.
That was the first song then that I ever taught in a festival. So, can I sing the song? Right?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can you sing it?
It's a simple song. It says, "Love, don't worry. Perfect love casts out fear." And in this tradition, we just call it song catching. Like, we don't really try very hard to write songs. You just open your heart and usually put your body in some motion, biking, walking, and then here comes a song to keep you company. So a real simple song. It goes, "Love, don't worry. Love, don't worry. Perfect love casts out fear." So fast forward, maybe 10 years from that moment, 5 years from that moment, I had moved home to explore permaculture. Part of what happened in healing up from that violent act in St. Louis was my first encounter with the carceral state and watching someone be put away for the rest of his life. And instinctually, I knew like that's not what we do to family. Like we have the power to call each other back home instead of cage each other. So that experience opened up for me a lifetime commitment to abolish prison, to do everything I can in this body in this lifetime to end the carceral state in my mind and in the structures around me. And so I was guided home to really just like heal from the roots, to make peace with the aspects of, making enemy of my family or the structure that I was grown up in, and to really find the beauty in the ways that we could play and pray together again and forgive each other. I heard an invitation from BIPOC colleagues in St. Louis. The most interesting thing that white folks can do is go do this work with your people. So I started doing race work with the church ladies who would come to my yoga class. And I was really calling in a spiritual mama. And the answer was that I met Liz Rogg, who's an amazing village weaver in Decorah, Iowa. And for 5-6 years organized the Village Fire Singing Festival, which was a huge hub of cultural and spiritual growth in the Midwest and a big like seeding of the community singing culture. And so one night at the campfire the first year, I was so like nervous, but I knew I wanted to attempt to teach a song. And so I sang the first line of that song, and it was gathered with 30 or 50 people around a fire. It's dark, you can't see anyone's faces, but with my voice trembling, I sang out that line, and then everybody repeated it back to me, and I just exploded into like tears and laughter. And it was this feeling of really my soul coming home to my body.
Yeah.
What you were meant to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And just how we village. There was something, Francis Weller talks about, we came into this world looking for the 40 sets of eyes that can be like, you're real. We're going to back you. We're going to walk with you. We see the gifts that you're here to bring. And I didn't get that. Did you get that? And so when you feel the energy of that coming towards you, it's so reholding.
Okay. So I want to like pull some strings together here. So you in your 20s left the church, sort of did relationships with your family sort of splinter a little bit, and you went off and really tapped into yourself. And then you had this violent thing happen to you. And then it's after that you returned to Illinois, to the family, started to do a lot of deep healing work. Is that sort of the timeline of how it went?
Yep, that's what happened.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how there was a return to the root, right? There was a severing of the root. There was an exploration, and then you returned to do some of this deep healing work. And how long were you in that sort of process of doing your own healing within yourself and with your family, with the church, all of that?
I remember being like, let me move home and, maybe start this garden project. I'll probably be home for 6 months. That was April Fool's Day on 2013.
The irony of that.
I moved home on purpose. I'm like, hey,
On purpose.
ego, here's a little joke for you. Never, ever would have thought that I would have moved back to my, to my farm town, hometown. And it was such a beautiful decade. It was a decade.
It was a decade. You stayed for 10 years.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about the impact you made during that time. I mean, like you said, you learned that from your BIPOC colleagues that going back and doing work in your own community was a way to, do work around racism and do work around the things you had learned when you were in St. Louis. I assume you took them back. Were you able to create a village there where you could lead, and were people receptive?
It's a beautiful question. And the first thing that came to me is not what I was able to impact, but how I was impacted and healed, right? Because I think one of the shadows of progressives or the left is, thinking we know. Maybe that's just a shadow of being human. We think we know better than everybody else, and the one side says to the other side. And so I think I really learned how important relationship is and how important it is to really be curious about someone's formation. Lawrence Cole, one of our song mentors, has a song that's like, an enemy is someone whose story you haven't yet heard.
Right.
I love that.
And there's I can't remember who said this, but there's a thought that really shapes my thinking around abolition, is that it's only in an uncondemned state that any of us can change. And, so I think I moved back with, like we do, we're young, all these ideas, and certainly was able to bring tools and skills that uplifted the community. And then what I got to receive was some polish of the hubris or judgment or arrogance that comes when we think we know, right? Because we
So
all
the
know.
city girl that went off to the city and learned all this, cool new wave, you go back home and you find some humbleness through your interactions with all these people.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
can we bring what we know and what we love, but can we come humbly and
Yeah.
not think it's any better than, it's just a piece. All of us have a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So I got to get schooled in beautiful ways, and I got to give in really beautiful ways. I created a super small, humble social justice yoga studio. A lot of people got to practice their first practice there, and it was a really special home.
I love that's. Thank you for sharing
And
that.
your emotion is coming up right now. So I would love to hear what that's about.
I think a lot of times it's like we think we have certain metrics that are ingrained in us to expect for success: numbers, people, numbers, money. And there was none of that there. But there was so much love, and it was a potent thing to get to paint Black Lives Matter banners in that space and walk around the one big intersection in town, and you look at people's eyes at the stoplight, and you've been knowing them since you were 5, and it's a different thing. It hits really different than being one of thousands at a big city rally. So yeah, that time taught me a lot about relationship and standing in what we care about without judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like it was very reciprocal, the giving and receiving of so much love.
It was a beautiful time. And it was clear for me with it was the COVID, blessing, blessing curse.
Yeah. The light and dark of COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't my body didn't want to teach yoga online. But we had scheduled, I think we were doing a study group with, maybe it was Ruth King's Mindful of Race. And I didn't want to not do that. And so that was when I learned how to translate things to Zoom. And I wanted to do something that was helping us stay in our bodies on the screen. And so that something became song instead of yoga. And that was how then I shifted from my work being the yoga studio to hosting groups, which grew to be online groups around, like holding the wisdom of our wounds, decolonizing our minds, different topics, grieving together. I would hold these small groups, and the way that we would drop into our bodies and create a heart space was to sing together.
What strikes me is that you left a small town where you said you were raised in a way that maybe you didn't use your voice, and then you returned home to find it and share it, which is really Beautiful through
I know.
line.
I'm feeling the courage too of this story, because it's so easy to like it would have been so easy for you to leave that environment, that small town, and never go back and stay in the city and find your people there. And so the courage to go back home and to go back home as the wild girl, the evolve you do instead of just going back into the good girl, that would have been readily accepted. That just the courage. And I'm sure there were instances of bumping into big time challenge.
Yeah, it was ultimately, I think it was just I think of things a lot, just framing things within the soul journey. And I think my soul wanted that cycling back to get to, be who I am without needing to make anybody else wrong and without needing anybody else's approval.
Oh, yeah.
And I also just I really love me some small town Midwest culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've explored different places in the world and I've explored the coast and I appreciate it. But the place that my soul feels most home is walking in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful arc.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
It really is.
Today's episode is brought to you by Dr. Yoga Mama, which is all the many offerings I have blending psychological science with the ancient wisdom of yoga and mindfulness. Join me for a yoga class, a meditation weekend, an online course, Wisdom Wednesday, which is the first Wednesday of every month, or maybe even an international retreat like Greece in the fall of 2025. By providing spaces and experiences for people to look inward, it is my great honor to watch people become the change they wish to see in the world.
This podcast is being sponsored by Kate Moreland Coaching. As a transformational coach and an advocate for authenticity and well-being, I work to support individuals and organizations navigating challenging times. Whether you are an individual, a leader, or an organization, your creative power lies in your authenticity. Doing the work to understand your strengths and acknowledge the patterns and rocks that are in your way is the path to well-being. Whether it's your career or your relationship with yourself or others, transformational change begins within. To learn more, reach out to me at katemorelandcoaching.com. And then you landed here. How did that happen here in Iowa City?
Well, you see, what had happened was once we were sort of out again in the world.
So this is post-COVID.
I was getting stir crazy, leading song circles on Zoom. And so I had also shifted from being just like a bike lifestyle to buying my first car. I bought my little Prius, baby blue. And Liz Rod calls it going visiting. I just started going visiting. And I had camping gear in the back and I would go visit different song circle communities, people that I had met from Village Fire and start singing with them. And I was really excited to start practicing because I really kind of came of age as a song leader on Zoom. You don't know how to conduct, And so it was just my school getting lots of reps in of practicing song circles and reweaving community after different ways we'd been severed during the pandemic.
Can you describe a song circle to people who don't know it or have never been in one?
Anywhere from like 5 to 300 people gathered together, usually in a circle. And we share songs that are taught on the spot, but there's no paper involved. Because one of the important things is eye contact and looking at each other's faces. A lot of times when you see a choir, they're looking down at paper. And we're also training our ears to hear. We're training our eyes to see. We're training our mirror neurons to pay attention and feel each other. And so I'll call a line like, forget your perfect offering. And then we all sing, forget your perfect offering. Just sing the song that you can sing. Just sing the song that you can sing. There is a crack in everything. There is a crack in everything. That's how
That's how.
The light.
The light.
That's how.
That's how.
Then this one, we sing the last line together. It goes, the light gets in. Let's try it.
The light gets in.
And it's that easy.
It's so fun.
It is so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it's breath work, it's all the things about what our bodies do when we're physically practicing together. We calm down, we tone our vagus nerve, our heartbeats start to sync up.
Yeah.
And so it's a very efficient state change, and it's a collective attunement. And so I just became a student of that, and I met Professor Mary Cohen at one of the Iowa City song circles. The Iowa City has a gorgeous co-held song family here, so it was always really fun to come and visit them when I was touring. And Mary heard in a circle when I was sharing for a time. I taught art at the Juvenile Detention Center in Urbana, and I was sharing some of my experiences there in the story leading up to a song. And so Mary let me know afterwards about her incredible work with the Oakdale Prison Choir, with half inside singers, half outside singers, and my mind was blown.
Mm-hmm.
And that project was paused during COVID and then canceled. And one of her pivots to keep the energy alive was to partner outside musicians with inside musicians. And so she invited me to be part of that project, which was beautiful and life-changing, and composed a song called Over Under with incarcerated musician Anthony Rod. And so Mary and I were in touch from that collaboration, and she floated this application to me last February, and I've never applied for anything within the university environment, but my heart just went boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. So I applied and was delighted to land here.
And so you got this year-long fellowship through the University of Iowa. And what has that entailed? What are you doing?
It's a beautiful fellowship structure. It's called the Grant Wood Art Colony, and they provide us housing in a neighborhood with other artists. So I'm here with two phenomenal artists, Matthew Willie Garcia and Rush Baker IV, a printmaker and a painter. And so my fellowship is within the School of Music, and I'm invited to teach a course that I design and to do whatever I want with the rest of my time. And so the course that I designed is called Community Singing as Collective Power. And we study what creates a circle. What is this technology of a circle? How do we shape and hold a circle in a good way? And we study the technology of song. What does it do in a community? And we look at different moments in our collective history where song has sparked or changed culture. And then the students are writing their own songs, leading their own songs. It's so fun. It's really beautiful. We sing for about half of the class every class period.
And that's how I landed in one of them. I mean, Kimberly, who's here with us today, beautiful Kimberly, sent us a text and said, show up. You will love this.
Well, I have to say, I remember after the first song circle that she went, and then my mentor, Candida, went to, they came back after that song circle to this office. And I was like, are you guys high? What just happened? They were
and they were still
on
singing.
fire, and they were singing all the songs, and they're like, oh my gosh, you have to meet this person. She was amazing. And it was so beautiful to see. I think it was just post-election, so there was a lot of darkness and heaviness hanging around, and their energy was so different. And until I went to my first song circle with you, I didn't fully fathom it, and then I felt it. There's a effervescent, there's a lightness, there's a connectivity, there's a reconnection to joy that sometimes we forget we have.
And I was struck by the intergenerational piece that I loved as I looked around. And you're right, there's no music. I had to use my brain and remember the words, but you are making eye contact with people. That in that, I don't know if it was 30 minutes, I can't remember, but it just, the power of that short time and what happens is, it was amazing.
It's so interesting to do research on people's like metrics, physiology, all of that pre and post,
Yeah.
because
It
it's
changes you.
yeah, it changes you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My work in St. Louis was as a community artist and organizer. I care so much, and I'm so curious about how do we drop into and unlock a real co-creative state, a space for emergence to flow through. And my time teaching yoga in Rantoul was a real education in welcoming people who didn't have a practice in their bodies to come and feel safe practicing in their bodies, and how to do that in a pretty universal space, and in a space that really welcomes beginners. And so song leading for me feels like, taking some of the experiences from the co-creative art decade and some experiences from the co-creative healing decade and sort of merging them together. I think one of the things that fascinates me the most is the quality of the connections that are built within people in the room. When we're in a meeting space and we're mostly in our minds, things are happening often according to an agenda that was pre-planned. And something else is so possible when we're in the energy of play. I mean, we see it all the time with children, right? We're creating worlds. And I think right now, culturally, we're feeling this clashing between very different narratives. And I feel an invitation to anchor my being in a narrative where all beings have access to healing resources, where all beings have access to love and to resource and to health. And when we sing together, we have a lot of access to a healed future. Like I've been really vibing lately with the Arundhati Roy quote, which I'll paraphrase something like, "Another world's not only possible on a quiet day. I can hear her breathing."
I saw that. Yeah. Well, and those circles, it feels like such a combination of all the parts of you. The song, the community change and organizing, the work you did, even, picking up on the justice piece of the quality of voice and having, no one's above anyone in those circles. It's just we're all singing together. And so it feels like an experience you've created from the life that you've lived almost.
Isn't that the fun part of getting older?
Yes.
You can see how like every little experience, every little person you meet, every little course, they sort of weave into this fabric that makes so much sense only in retrospect.
And that's why we asked that question about the first 10 years, because it just happened. We didn't even plan to do that. And then we started to see, it always ties into where someone is when we interview them. So I agree, like retrospectively, you're like, I get it now, why I moved home for 10 years and why I met this person and why this challenge happened. Yeah.
Yeah, retrospect helps me trust. Like when I just look at all of the opening through the oops, all of the miracles that came through the greatest pain, I can just there's a Sufi poem, the title of which is Joy at Sudden Disappointment. Just like we practice, we get more reps as we get older, that we can make medicine from every experience. And I love singing together because it can hold all of it. Like I love a spirituality that engages play and childlikeness and our elderhood and our biggest heartbreaks and our sensuality and aching for justice. Like I love a way of being together where there's permission for it all, and we can change in a moment, like just like the wind. And song, that's how song plays.
So I have to say, when I went to one of your first song circles, I felt a lot of there was a bittersweetness for me. And it's simply because I grew up in a church and the music was, I mean, I'm a musician. And so singing hymns was what I grew up with. But I'm not affiliated with the church anymore. And so I don't collectively sing with other people. I sing with my children in my car, but I'm not with groups of people making music. And so I, on that song circle day, felt so much joy. And then that feeling of like, oh my God, I've missed this. And can you speak to that? Because my guess is there's many people who aren't maybe affiliated with organized religion, but that sort of group collective, and you're adding in play and you're adding in sensuality, all these things that maybe weren't in a traditional church setting.
Yeah, that experience that you shared is so common.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of what made me weep/laugh. My first village fire is like recognition of, oh, this thing that I love more than anything that formed me that I've been without. Like, here it is. And it's so common. I don't know if I've ever held a song circle where there isn't at least one person who's weeping, because that deprivation and that reclamation is very common in our experience. And yeah, so many people who find their way to community singing are people that, you know, left church for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I felt that too.
You felt that too, Kate.
I had tears because I had the same experience. That was the one part of church that I liked. Was the singing, even though I didn't always love the songs, but there was, there was emotion to it, right? There was something that like
it moved something energetically. Yeah.
And after leaving that, I haven't found that other than maybe going to a concert where everyone's singing along. You're in a large venue, but this felt intimate and kind of brought all those feelings back too, but on more of a, I don't know how to put it exactly, but there's not an agenda to it. Like church felt like, right? It's just singing.
There's more freedom.
It felt free.
Yeah.
A freer way to do it. But yeah, getting back to that was emotional.
And eye contact. I mean, we didn't have eye contact in a church pew, right? The eye contact and the collective energetics was on a totally different level.
Yeah. You're seeing people.
Yeah.
One of the first things I did in class, well, last semester we met in this dark opera studio, and it's, black box theater with stadium seating. And so I welcomed the class in, and I acted like I was going to like teach from the front of the room and had them all in chairs. And then it was this step-by-step move from the triangle shape, one leader with everyone focusing their attention there. And I just had them do a somatic check. Like, how does your body feel? There's a familiar shape: speaker audience, performer audience, teacher audience. And then we sang in that position. And then I invited them to come up and make a circle, check their body out, how'd that feel, and then singing in a circle. Because so much of what the beginning of the class is where our bodies know circle and where our bodies know triangle, and what is implicit in each of those shapes about how we relate to our own power and our co-creative power. And part of what song circles are like repopulating our memory with is what it's like to be in a circle and what happens in a circle. And really, for me, it's like it's a doorway to reclaiming deeper ritual states. And first, we just got to get comfortable again with our bodies being. It's an intimate way to be, And a lot of times, in people's first song circle, you see that in their body language, and I love to just welcome that, and for all us to just be exactly where we are, because there was definitely aspects of manipulation within ways our bodies and our emotions were invited to be in my childhood. And so I want to invite people to be in their fullness without any expectation of what that looks like for each individual.
Mm.
Well, what is the times we're living in right now feel so heavy and urgent, and I have the sense of this kind of broken world that we're all witnessing. How does song and your work, how is that going to be how is it an important piece of us moving forward and being in community to navigate this broken time?
Do you know Bayo Komalafe's quote, "The times are urgent, we must slow down"? There's a real pull in my own spirit to get real low, get real belly to the earth, ask what she knows and listen, and remember that I'm part of nature. My project for the spring is called Songlines, and that's a nod to Australian Aboriginal technology of song, sometimes called dreaming tracks or song spirals, which is a way that song is both creating the earth and creating by the earth and moving forward and backward in time, and much more than can be contained in words. But there's a way that I experience the element of song as real as the element of fire or wind or water. And song is an incredible teacher of right relationship with the whole of life. And as I listen with my kin in the song community, these songs are coming with very simple and accessible wisdom codes that, as we sing with them, as we work with them, as we pray with them, are reattuning us to who we get to be part of the web of life. I imagine that we can be graceful with each other during collapse. I know in my own life that when something's not working, it needs to decompose. And so now is a time of trusting the mushrooms, of trusting the collapse, of trusting these cycles that have always been moving through us, moving through time. And for me, song is a companion in that, both a way to hold the grief and the not knowing, and a way that we can make beauty together during despair.
I've always heard that the real healers in a community are the artists. And that's always struck me so deeply. And it feels sort of what you're speaking to, that at this moment of collapse or of this moment, and you're right, there's always been challenge in culture. We each are adding our own unique gift, and that the artists often are bringing and saying and putting into words or music what is the truth, or speaking to the pain, speaking to the love, speaking to the joy in ways that we all need to hear and metabolize.
Yeah, important contribution right alongside like everyone's contribution. Like I love Howard Thurman says, "Don't ask what the world needs, but ask
what makes you come alive."
Yeah.
What the world needs is all of us come alive. And so I feel like this time is such an invitation for all of us to like deeply tune in to the stream of love, the medicine that our own soul is here to bring, because it's that convergence of each of our gifting, each of our love, each of our longing that will create the matrix for what
Agreed.
what is being born.
Agreed. And that's what I love about your story is that when you were a kid, I mean, the seeds of this song leading were there, but there wasn't the space to really step into that. So you went pre-med and then you went through all these different places until you really landed in what I would see as your true dharma. It took lots of iterations, but I really feel it in you, and being in a song circle with you. I'm like, oh my God, this woman is made to do this. And it does really bring deep healing to people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What lucky students you have right now that are experiencing learning from you, and will hopefully take it out.
And let's talk about, there are so many opportunities for people, especially if you're in the Iowa City area, to experience song circles with Lyndsey. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, where can people find you?
We are at the tail end of the Songlines project, which has been singing together in different like beloved village building sites around Iowa City. This Sunday we'll sing at the Stanley Museum.
Oh, wow.
And we're singing for cross-pollination. And April 13th we'll be singing at the historic Poor Farm, and we'll be singing for Land Connection. April 27th will be the bike library in our sequins and our spandex, singing for People Power. And the culminating sing is May 4th at Old Brick.
Beautiful. And we'll put all the information in about that. And Lyndsey's also going to be a part of our Hope Summit on April 25, leading community song there. So if you're interested in that, you're going to get to meet Lyndsey live and in person at that event as well. We're so grateful to have her.
We
excited
really
for that.
are.
We have a final question, and then I have a final request. So let's start with the final question.
Okay.
Kate, you know this one.
So the wild woman archetype is all about reconnecting to that inner self, which you've talked beautifully about today. And often there are portals. Clarissa Pinkel Estes says there are doorways that in life that lead us back to ourself, our natural wisdom, our natural wild. So if you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. Is there a door, or perhaps more than one, that you feel like was your doorway back to your wild self?
This question is so delicious. Many doors. The door that presented itself in my mind's eye when you spoke is my drum.
It's your doorway back.
Yeah, it came a good chunk of years into my song leading. And it's a big, long story, so I won't tell it. But it was the way that I began to understand the role of priestess. And still something that I hold with an open palm and a lot of mystery, but it is who I know myself to be.
Thank you for that.
So my request is, can we end with some songs?
Yeah.
That was so fun.
It was.
And I also want you to tell people where they can find you, and that you're all over Spotify because you have all these amazing songs that people can listen to. So let's start there. Tell people where they can find you, and then maybe we can end our.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
let's
do it.
On Instagram, I'm at Lila Gaia, LILA .GAIA. My website is lyndseyscott.earth. And my music
feels very appropriate.
And yeah, my music is under my name, Lyndsey Scott, on Spotify, Bandcamp. If you love to pay your artists, we love it when you pay us. And why don't we sing out with The Way Knows? Want to do that?
One of our faves.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that where we should start somewhere there? You don't have to know the way knows the way. You want to sing that with me? You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way. The way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. Tag that. The way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
Joy.
this
Yes, you are.
conversation. Melanie
Thanks.
Morton says that we listen each other into speech, that when people are really listening to us with their whole selves, that we listen ourselves into a deeper understanding. And I received that gift today.
Thank you for sharing all your gifts with us and the world. Truly.
Beautiful soul.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.